3 months ago, Miles Russell had everything. 5-shot lead, 9 holes left, the most dominant junior game in the country, a gallery that had already started celebrating, analysts on ESPN who were calling him the future of American golf. And then, hole 10, birdie, hole 11, birdie, hole 12, eagle, hole 16, birdie, hole 18, 4 feet, dead center, Charlie Woods, 5 shots down, damaged wrist, 95 yards from the pin on the most important shot of his life, and he didn't blink. Miles Russell watched every single second of that back nine from 15 feet away. He saw the swing, he heard the crowd, he watched the ball land 4 feet from the hole, on 18, and he knew, before Charlie even pulled the putter from the bag, that it was going in. He knew. Why, and here's the part that nobody has talked about since that day. Miles Russell is one of the most prepared competitors in junior golf. He studies everything. He leaves nothing to chance. He knows his own game inside out, and he knows his opponents even better. But when he went back and studied every frame of that back nine, every shot, every decision, every moment between the shots, he found something that his preparation couldn't explain, something that his launch monitor couldn't measure, something that his swing coach couldn't fix. And honestly, it's the same thing that's been keeping him up at night ever since. And the people who already understand what that thing is, the ones who've been on this channel long enough to see this rivalry develop from the very beginning, they knew this moment was coming before Miles even teed it up that day. Wendy, if you're not one of them yet, subscribe right now, because what I'm about to break down changes everything about where this rivalry is heading. Here is what most people get wrong about that back nine. They watch the highlights. They see the birdies, the eagle, the wedge on 18. They see the scoreboard flip from 5 down to even, and they think the story is about Charlie Woods making clutch shots under pressure. That's not the story. The story is about what Miles Russell stopped doing. Because here is the truth about 5-shot leads in match play golf. They don't disappear because the other guy gets hot. They disappear because the guy who has the lead starts playing a different game without even realizing it. And that is exactly what happened to Miles Russell on that back nine. Look, I want you to forget the scorecard for a second. Forget the birdies and the eagle and the wedge on 18. Forget everything you think you know about that final 9 holes. And instead, I want you to watch Miles. Because what was happening to Miles Russell between the shots, not during the shots, between them, tells you everything about why Charlie Woods is the most dangerous junior competitor in the country right now. Loop 1, hint to interrupt to Tiger, memory to cliffhanger. Miles walked onto the 10th tee with a 5-shot lead and the body language of a player who had already won. Shoulders relaxed, stride confident, jaw loose. And that right there, that comfort, was the beginning of the end. Because in golf, comfort is a trap. The moment you start protecting something instead of hunting something, your entire nervous system shifts. Your muscles tighten in ways you can't feel consciously. When your decision-making slows down, your commitment to shots becomes fractional, not zero, just fractional. And in golf, fractional doubt is all it takes. Tiger Woods talked about this once after the 2008 US Open at Torrey Pines. Not about his leg, not about the pain, not about the impossible putts he made on one working knee. He talked about the moment he stopped thinking about the lead and started thinking about the shot. He said something that Earl had drilled into him for 20 years. The scoreboard is not your friend. The scoreboard tells you what already happened. The only thing that matters is what happens next. Charlie Woods grew up hearing that. Miles Russell learned it the hard way on that back nine. Because the moment Charlie birdied 10 and the lead went to 4, something shifted in Miles that he couldn't stop. So he looked at the scoreboard. Just once, just a glance. But that glance told his brain everything it needed to start playing defense instead of offense. And I'll tell you exactly what happened after that glance in a moment. But first, there is something specific about Charlie's body language on that back nine that I think is the real story here. Something that most people completely missed. Loop 2, hint again to rival strategy to tension, to cliffhanger, watch Charlie on hole 10. Not the swing, not the ball flight, not the result. Watch what he does before the swing. His pre-shot routine is identical to what it was on hole 1. Same number of waggles, Same look at the target, same breath before he pulls the club back. Identical. Now watch him on hole 14. Same routine. Hole 16, same routine. Hole 18, 95 yards. A tournament on the line. Same routine. Not similar, not close, identical. And that is something that takes years to build. You cannot fake it. You cannot manufacture it in a gym or on a launch monitor or by changing your grip. That kind of consistency under pressure comes from one place and one place only. A childhood spent being trained to treat the most important shot of your life exactly the same as the least important one. Earl Woods built that into Tiger. Tiger built it into Charlie. And Miles Russell, standing 15 feet away watching it happen in real time, had no answer for it. Because you cannot compete with a routine you don't have. You cannot match a calmness that wasn't built into you. And here's the moment that I believe broke Miles Russell completely. Not the eagle on 12, not the birdie on 16, not the wedge on 18, something much smaller than that. Something that happened between shots on the 14th hole that nobody in that gallery noticed. But Miles noticed. And when he tells the story of that back nine someday, and I believe he will, because great competitors always tell the story eventually, I think he will point to that moment on 14 as the exact second he knew the tournament was over. Not because of what Charlie did, because of what Charlie didn't do. Here is what Charlie didn't do on the 14th hole. He didn't look at Miles, not once. From the moment they walked onto that 14th tee to the moment Charlie tapped in his par and walked to 15, not a single glance, not a check. Not even the kind of unconscious peripheral look that most players give their opponent without even realizing it. Nothing. He was completely alone out there. Not lonely, alone. There is a difference. Lonely is when you want connection and can't find it. Alone is when you have chosen to exist in your own world so completely that the person standing 15 feet away simply doesn't register. Charlie Woods was alone on that back nine in a way that Miles Russell has never experienced in his entire competitive career. And that, right there, is what broke him. Because Miles feeds off competition. He feeds off the energy of knowing someone is pushing him. He plays his best golf when he feels the heat of a rival breathing down his neck. But Charlie wasn't breathing down his neck. Charlie wasn't even in the same conversation. He was somewhere else entirely, somewhere quiet. He's somewhere that the scoreboard and the gallery and the magnitude of the moment simply couldn't reach. And Miles had no idea how to compete with someone who wasn't competing with him. Look, this is the most underrated dynamic in all of competitive golf. Every great rivalry has two players who are intensely aware of each other. That awareness creates pressure, that pressure creates mistakes, and those mistakes decide tournaments. But Charlie Woods removed himself from that dynamic completely. He didn't ignore Miles as a competitive strategy. He ignored Miles because Miles was irrelevant to what Charlie was trying to do. Charlie wasn't trying to beat Miles Russell. He was trying to hit the next shot, just the next shot, nothing else. And when you are the player on the other side of that, when you are Miles Russell standing on the 14th tee watching a 15-year-old treat your 5-shot lead like background noise, something happens to you psychologically that is very difficult to come back from. You start questioning everything. Not your swing, not your club selection, not your game plan, yourself. You start asking the question that no competitor ever wants to ask in the middle of a tournament. Am I actually good enough for this? And the moment that question enters your head, the moment doubt stops being about a shot and starts being about your identity, you are no longer playing golf. You are surviving it. Miles was surviving it by the 15th hole. You could see it in the way he stood over his tee shot, the extra second of hesitation before the backswing, the slightly shorter finish, the eyes that went to the ground after impact instead of tracking the ball flight. These are not the mechanics of a player who is competing. These are the mechanics of a player who is enduring. And Charlie? Charlie was on the 15th fairway thinking about one thing, the next shot. By the 16th hole, the lead was gone. And something happened in that moment, the moment the scoreboard flipped to even, that I think tells you everything about the difference between these two competitors. Miles looked up at the leaderboard. Charlie didn't. One player was playing the scoreboard. The other player was playing golf. And in those final 3 holes, 16, 17, 18, the gap between those two approaches became the most expensive gap in junior golf history. Because Miles was trying to win a tournament. Charlie was trying to hit a good shot. And on the most important tee box of the entire day, 18, 95 yards, tournament on the line, that difference was the only thing that mattered. Miles stood behind Charlie and watched him go through his pre-shot routine. Same routine he had used on hole 1. Same routine he had used on hole 10 when he was 5 shots down. Same routine he had used on every single shot of the entire day. And in that moment, watching that routine, Miles Russell understood something about Charlie Woods that no amount of film study or launch monitor data or swing analysis could have ever taught him. Charlie Woods doesn't have a big game and a small game. He only has one game. And it looks exactly the same whether he is 5 shots up or 5 shots down. That is what Earl built into Tiger. That is what Tiger built into Charlie. And that is what Miles Russell is going to spend the next 10 years of his career trying to find inside himself. The people who have been watching this channel know exactly what I mean by that. And if you are just now beginning to understand what this rivalry is really about, this is the right place to be. Subscribe now, because this is only the beginning of what these two are going to show us. Here is what Miles Russell still can't explain. And I want to be honest with you, this is my red. This is 20 years of watching competitive golf and knowing what separates the players who win from the players who almost win. The reveal isn't in the scorecard, it isn't in the stats or the ball flight or the putting numbers. And the reveal is in one specific moment on that 18th hole that most people watched and didn't understand. When Charlie stepped up to that wedge shot, 95 yards, water left, pin tuck, tournament on the line, the gallery went quiet. The kind of quiet that only happens when everyone watching knows something important is about to occur. Miles was standing behind the ropes. Tiger was standing behind the ropes. Everyone was holding their breath, and Charlie Woods went through his routine. Same routine. Exact same routine he had used 112 times that day on every single shot from the first tee to the 17th green. Not similar, not close, identical. And when the ball left the club face and the crowd saw it tracking toward the flag and the roar started building from the back of the gallery, Charlie didn't react. Not until the ball stopped rolling and he could see exactly where it finished. 4 feet, left edge of the hole, makeable putt. And then, only then, did he allow himself one single fist pump. Small, controlled, measured, not celebration, confirmation. Like he had already seen it happen before it happened. And that right there, that one moment, is what Miles Russell cannot explain. Because Miles has watched that shot 100 times on his iPad. He has studied the swing, he has analyzed the ball flight, he has broken down every technical element of that wedge shot until there is nothing left to break down. And he still can't find the answer he's looking for. Because the answer isn't in the shot. The answer is in what came before the shot. 112 identical routines, 112 times of training his brain to treat every shot, regardless of the score, regardless of the moment, regardless of what was at stake, exactly the same. Earl Woods spent Tiger's entire childhood building that. Tiger spent Charlie's entire childhood passing it on. And what Miles found when he studied that footage, what scared him more than any scoreboard ever has, wasn't the talent. It was the infrastructure. The invisible, unshakable, generational infrastructure that was built into Charlie Woods before he was old enough to understand what was being built. You can copy a swing, you can copy a training schedule, you can copy a diet, a warm-up routine, a club selection, but you cannot copy 20 years of Earl Woods standing behind a 5-year-old on a putting green at 2 in the morning, whispering distractions in his ear. You cannot copy the thousands of hours Tiger spent sitting with Charlie between rounds talking about what the game actually requires at the highest level. You cannot copy a legacy, and that is what Miles found in that footage. Not a shot he couldn't hit, a life he couldn't replicate. And honestly, that is the scariest thing one competitor can discover about another. Not that they are better, but that they were built for this in a way that you simply were not. Here is the truth about this rivalry. Miles Russell is not losing to Charlie Woods. He is losing to Earl Woods. He is losing to every 2 a.m. putting session Tiger ever endured as a 5-year-old. He is losing to every psychological drill Earl designed to make pressure feel like Tuesday morning. He is losing to a generational blueprint that was started before Charlie was even born. And that is not a talent gap. That is a legacy gap. And legacy gaps don't close in a gym. They don't close on a launch monitor. They don't close by studying footage on an iPad at midnight. They close, if they ever close, over years, over thousands of hours of building your own infrastructure, your own identity, your own unshakable process that looks exactly the same whether you are 5 shots up or 5 shots down. Miles Russell is 17 years old. He has time. But right now, in this moment, he is staring at something that no amount of preparation could have warned him about. And honestly, that is the most human thing about this entire rivalry. Because we have all stood in that moment. We have all looked at someone else and realized that they were built for something in a way that we simply were not. And the only question that matters after that moment is what you do next. Here is my verdict. Miles Russell didn't lose that back 9 to Charlie Woods. He lost it to a legacy he couldn't see coming. And the question that nobody can answer yet is this: can you build that kind of infrastructure from scratch? Or does it have to be handed down to you? Drop your answer below. Next week, we are going somewhere nobody has gone yet in this rivalry. Tiger Woods was watching that back 9 from behind the ropes, and what he saw scared him for a completely different reason than it scared Miles. That story is next.